But first, we start with the latest from the war in Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say that their forces are holding their positions in several cities in the eastern Donbas region, including in Severodonetsk, where the Kremlin has concentrated its invasion force over the past several weeks. Kyiv also claims that its forces have retaken ground in the south, seeking to make progress then in the biggest chunk of territory that Moscow has seized since the start of the war. In his latest evening address, the Ukrainian president insisted his forces are disrupting the occupiers' plans.
The situation on the front line today is without significant changes. Severodonetsk, Lysychansk and other cities in Donbas, which the occupiers now consider key targets, are holding.
Well, for more details now, we'll cross to our senior reporter, Catherine Norris-Trent, who's standing by for us in Kyiv. Good morning, Catherine. So as we've seen, Volodymyr Zelensky is saying that Ukrainian forces are holding their positions in several parts of the east. What's the latest then on the fighting in the Donbas?
Good morning, Erin. Ukraine's president insists that Ukraine's forces are holding on there in the Donbas despite coming under extremely heavy fire. Still, the Ukrainian officials again appealing for more heavy weapons. That battle is continuing in Severodonetsk, where more buildings have been reported hit, and across the river to the town of Lysychansk as well. A senior advisor to the Ukrainian president said that Ukraine was losing between 100 and 200 soldiers every day. That's Ukrainian soldiers being killed there. Many more are being injured, so it's a very fierce battle indeed. Meanwhile, further south, because this, of course, is still a multi-fronted war, in the south, President Zelensky said the situation was looking a little more optimistic in the Zaporizhzhia region to the south, where Ukrainian forces have been launching a counter-offensive there and in the Kherson Oblast. But that, again, is a long and slow battle. What we're seeing now is a pounding artillery war from both sides, and that's why the Ukrainians are still appealing for more multiple rocket launching systems and artillery systems from Western allies. And they say they need to get them there quickly because the next few weeks could really be decisive there.
And Catherine, on Thursday, there was another major development in the war. That's Russian separatists in Donetsk sentencing 3 foreign nationals, including British nationals, to death, accusing them of being mercenaries. What have the reactions been out of Ukraine?
There's been widespread condemnation here in Kiev of the verdict of those so-called courts in the self-styled separatist republics in eastern Ukraine, which are in reality Russian-controlled. So widespread condemnation here, people denouncing what they say is clearly not a fair trial. We spoke to a friend of one of those 3 men who was condemned to death. The Moroccan national, Brahim Sadoun, his friend, of course, said that he did not consider this a fair trial, a fair verdict, and pointed out that all 3 men had signed contracts with the Ukrainian armed forces. He insisted they were not mercenaries, that they were under contract and should be treated as combatants and therefore subject to the Geneva Convention, which does not allow for combatants to be put on trial just for participating in a war. Now, according to Russian media, they now have 1 month to appeal, which they plan to do, and the family and the relatives and friends of the Moroccan national, in any case, say they remain optimistic that this sentence won't be carried out, that it's just a bargaining position in some potential future prisoning swap. So they're hoping that there will be some kind of leverage put on, not only by Ukrainian forces, but by governments and institutions around the world.
All right, Catherine Norris-Trent in Kyiv, thank you very much for that update. The Kremlin's war led to a mass exodus of Russians who opposed the invasion, with many fleeing to neighboring countries where a visa is not required. Well, now Berlin will offer long-term residency permits to Russian journalists, scientists, and other political dissidents who have fled the country. That will allow them to continue their work in Germany, and among them is Maxim Kurnikov, who's a top editor at the liberal and now shut-down Echo of Moscow radio station. Our Berlin correspondent sent this report for a closer look.
Since they got to Berlin, Maxim Kurnikov and Masha Myers have had a single goal: bringing back to life Echo of Moscow, the famous radio station the Kremlin banned from the airwaves because of its honest reporting on the war in Ukraine. But like many independent journalists, they fled Russia on a Schengen visa, which doesn't give them the right to work here. So they've been waiting for a solution for 3 months.
We can't do even bank account for ourselves. We can't do a company because we have no opportunity to do it, and that's why it is very slow, but we hope that when we will get these visas, it will be much easier to start.
There are some 70 Russian journalists in exile in Germany who should, in the coming days, receive long-term visas. The German government is also going to spend €3.5 million helping Russian journalists and opposition figures in exile over the next year. 3 months after the start of the war, it's a satisfactory solution, if slow in coming, according to the Euro MP Sergei Lagodinsky.
All these people represent the face of a better, more democratic Russia. And it's a Russia we want to contribute to build for the future.
Journalists and dissidents who are still in Russia or other countries will be able to ask for a humanitarian visa to come to Germany. But unlike refugees from Ukraine, they will be considered on a case-by-case basis, a distinction Amnesty International thinks is unfair.
We are talking about people with whom members of our government have had regular contact in the past. So I don't understand why we can't find a global solution for a group of people that's not that big.
Maxim Kornikov and Masha Meyer still hope the government's plan will help other Russian journalists come to Berlin to strengthen their team, because Echo of Moscow will be back, streaming on the internet by summer's end.
An attempted coup that put